Mysteries of Sherlock Holmes. The Adventure of the Speckled Band. It was early in April 1883. At this time, I was living with Sherlock Holmes. We had rooms at 221B Baker Street. One morning, I woke up early. Holmes was standing by my bed. He was already dressed. I looked up at him in surprise. My clock showed that it was only 7. Holmes got up late, as a rule. "Very sorry to wake you up, Watson," he said. "What is it?" I asked. "A fire?" "No, it is a young lady. She just came in. She says she must see me. It looks like a case, Watson. I thought you would want to be in on it from the first." I put on my clothes. In a few minutes, I was ready. We went down to the sitting room. A lady got to her feet. She was dressed in black. We saw that her face was gray. Her eyes looked like those of a hunted animal. "Good morning," said Holmes. "My name is Sherlock Holmes, and this is Dr. Watson. He is my dear friend. Please tell us everything." "My name is Helen Stoner," said the lady. "I am living with my stepfather. His name is Dr. Grimsby Roylott. He is the last living Roylott. The Roylotts have been at Stoke Moran for hundreds of years." Holmes nodded. "I know the name," he said. Miss Stoner went on. "At one time, the Roylott family was one of the richest in England. But in the last 100 years, all has changed. 5 heads of the family in a row were bad men. They did not take care of their lands. They wasted all the family's money. At last, nothing was left. Nothing except a little land and a 200-year-old house. My stepfather saw how things were. He knew he would have to make his own way. So he went to school and became a doctor. Then he went to India. In India, Dr. Doyle married my mother. My father had died just the year before. My twin sister Julia and I were only 2 years old when Dr. Doyle became our stepfather. My mother had some money, £1,000 a year. When she married Dr. Roylott, she made a new will. She left her money to him. The will also said that Roylott must take care of Julia and me. My mother died the year we came back to England. Dr. Roylott then took me and Julia to Stoke Moran. My mother's money was enough for all of us to live on. We could have had a good life. But after my mother died, my stepfather was a changed man. He made no friends around his old neighborhood. He would fight anyone he came across. Now everyone in the village is afraid of my stepfather. He is as strong as he is crazy. People stay out of his way. His only friends are a band of gypsies. He lets these people camp on his land. Sometimes he goes out and visits them in their tents. Then there are the wild animals. He brought them from India. There is a cheetah and a baboon. These 2 animals have the run of the place. From the first, my sister Julia and I had a very bad time. No one wanted to work at the house. We had to do all the work ourselves. Julia was only 30 when she died, but her hair was already getting white. You can see that my hair is getting white too. "Your sister is dead then?" Holmes asked. "She died 2 years ago. It is of her death that I wish to speak. My sister and I did not get many chances to Deepstoke Moran. But we have an aunt. My stepfather let Julia and me pay a short visit to her house. On one of those visits, my sister met a young man. She fell in love with him. They planned to marry. My stepfather said nothing against her marriage, but less than 2 weeks later, Julia was dead. Sherlock Holmes had been sitting back in his chair, but at least these last words he sat up, his eyes opened. "Please give us every little fact," he said. "That will be easy," Helen Stoner said. "Every little bit of that night will be burned into my mind for the rest of my life. As I have said, the house is very old. We live in only one wing of it. All our bedrooms are on the ground floor. The first bedroom is Dr. Voilot's. The second bedroom was my sister's. The third bedroom is mine. There are no doors between the bedrooms, but they are open out onto the same long hall. On the night Julia died, Dr. Voilot went to his room early, but we knew he had not gone to sleep. Julia could smell his scars. Julia never could stand that smell, so she came to my room. She sat down for some time, talking about her wedding. At 11 o'clock, she got up to go, but then she stopped at the door. She looked back at me. "Tell me, Helen," she said, "have you ever heard someone whistling in the dead of night?" "Never," I said. "You are sure you don't whistle in your sleep?" she said. "No, I don't," I said. "Why do you ask?" "I ask because I keep hearing a whistle. I hear it about 3 o'clock every morning. I am a light sleeper. The whistle always wakes me up. I cannot tell where the whistle is coming from. Maybe it's coming from the next room. Maybe it's coming from outside. But I just thought I would ask if you had heard it." "No," I said, "I have not. Maybe it is the gypsies camping out there." "That must be it," she said. Then she said good night. I heard her go down the hall. Then I heard her turn the keys in the door. Said Holmes. "Did you always lock yourselves in at night?" "Always. We were afraid of the cheetahs and baboon." "Quite so. Please go on with your story." "I could not sleep that night. You remember that my sister and I were twins. They say twins can feel things that are happening to each other. It was a wild night. The wind was blowing hard. The rain beat against the window. All of a sudden, I heard a scream. It was my sister's voice. I jumped up from my bed. I ran into the hall. It was then that I heard a low whistle. A few seconds later, I heard a clanging sound. I ran to my sister's door. It started to open. My sister came to the door. Her face was white with fear. She could not stand up. I ran to her. I threw my arms around her. She fell to the floor. I bent over her. Then she spoke. I will never forget her voice. "Oh my God, Helen," she said. "It was the band, the speckled band. And then, Mr. Holmes, she died." "One moment," said Holmes. "Are you sure about this whistle? And about the clanging sound? You're sure you heard them?" "I am sure," said Helen Stoner. "Was your sister dressed to go out?" asked Holmes. "No, she was in her nightdress. We found a candle in her hand." So she must have tried to make a light." "What did the police say about the case?" "They looked into it with great care," replied Helen Stoner. "They knew Dr. Voilot, you see, but they could not find out how Julia died. The windows are closed from the inside with heavy bars. The walls were thick. The floor was thick too. There was no way any person could have come in that room except through the door." "And you're sure the door was locked?" Holmes asked again. Miss Stoner said that she was sure. Holmes shook his head. I could see he was not happy. "This looks very bad," he said. "Please go on with your story." 2 years have gone by since Julia died," said Miss Turner. "My life has been very sad. But about a month ago, a man asked me to marry him. His name is Armitage, Percy Armitage. We're going to be married this spring. My stepfather has said nothing against a match, but 2 days ago he told me that I must move into my sister's room. He said he had to fix the walls in my room, so I moved next door into the very room in which Julia died. Last night I lay there thinking about Julia, and then I heard it, a low, long whistle. It was the same sound Julia had talked about on the night she had died. I jumped up and lit a candle. I could see nothing in the room, but I could not go back to bed. I got dressed. I waited for daylight, and then I came right here to ask your help." Holmes said nothing for a long time. Then he spoke. "We must act right away," he said. "I will come to Stoke Moran this afternoon, Miss Turner. Can I get into the house without Dr. Roylott knowing it?" "Yes," she said. "He said he would be away all day." "Good. You go back home then." Holmes said we will come down on early afternoon train. Miss Turner left the room. "And what do you think of it all, Watson?" Holmes asked. "It is a very dark business," I said. "I am afraid it is. But we do have some clues. We have her word, the speckled band. We know that a band of gypsies was camping on the land. They could have whistled. Then there was the clanging sound. It might have been the gypsies too. It could have been the clanging of the window bar. I see many things wrong with that idea," I said. So do I," said Holmes. "That is why we are going to Stoke Moran. Let's order breakfast, Watson. Then I shall walk downtown. I'll need some facts before we do anything else." It was 1 o'clock when Holmes got back. He had a blue paper in his hand. It had notes and numbers all over it. "I have seen the will of Dr. Roylott's wife," he said. "She left £1,000, all right, but each girl would get £250 if she got married. If the girls died before getting married, Roylott won't get all the money. So you see why Dr. Roylott wanted Julia and Helen dead. We had better get going, Watson, and I would like it very much if you bring your gun." We went down to Waterloo Station. We caught the next train out. Then we found a horse and car to take us to Stoke Moran. Helen Stoner met us at the Stoke Moran gate. "I have been waiting for you," she cried. "Don't worry," said Holmes. "We will soon get to the bottom of this. Now please show me the house." Helen Stoner showed us where the bedroom was. First, Holmes walked along the outside of the house. He looked at the windows. He asked Miss Turner to go into her own room and close the windows. Then he tried to get in. He had no luck. Next, we went to the room where Julia Stoner had died. It was a small room with a low ceiling. Holmes sat down on one of the chairs. We looked the whole room over. We did not speak for a while. "Why, here is a bar pour," he said. He pointed to a long robe on the wall. "In what part of the house does the bar ring?" "Downstairs," Helen Stoner said. "My stepfather put it in 2 years ago. The bar is for calling the servants, but we never use it." Holmes walked over to the bar pour. He gave it a strong tug. "Why, it is a dummy," he said. "It doesn't even ring. See, it just hangs from that wire up there. The wire, well, the air vent. And by the way, what is that air vent doing up there? An air hole should go to the outside. That one seems to go into the next room. I think I shall have a look." We went into Dr. Roylott's room. In it were only 3 things: a camp bed, a wooden chair, and a large iron safe with a lamp on it. Holmes tapped the safe. "What is in here?" he asked. "My stepfather's paper," replied Helen Sterner. "Are you sure this isn't a cat in the safe?" said Holmes. "Look at this." He picked up a small dish of milk. "We don't keep a cat," said Miss Sterner. "Just a cheetah and a baboon." "The milk would not go far with a cheetah," said Holmes. "And what's this?" He held up a small dog leash. The end of it had been tied into a loop. I had never seen my friend's face so dark. We went outside. We walked up and down the yard several times. Then Holmes spoke to Miss Stoner. "You must do exactly as I tell you," he said. "It could mean your life." She nodded. "See that inn across the street?" asked Holmes. "We will go there right now. We will watch the house from there. Tonight, I want you to go to bed in your sister's room, just as you did last night. Then wait until you hear Dr. Voylot go to bed. At that moment, open and close the window. It will be similar to Dr. Watson and me. Then go to your own room and wait. Watson and I will be waiting for your signal. Then we will leave the inn. We are going to spend the night in Julia's room." "I think you already know what happened, Mr. Holmes," said Holmes. "Please tell me, how did my sister die?" "We are not sure yet," said Holmes. "We must leave you now, Mr. We must not let the doctor see us until tonight, then." Holmes and I went in to wait. He had a room from which he could see Stoke Moran, and about 7 we saw Dr. Voylot get home. We knew it was he. We could hear him yelling at the boy who opened the gates. At about 9 o'clock, the lights in the house went out. All was dark. 2 hours had passed. Then we saw a light flash out from the middle window. "That's our signal," said Holmes. A moment later, we were out on the dark road. A cold wind blew in our face. We made our way over the old stone wall and across the yard. We got in through the window of Julia's room. We had to be very quiet. The smallest sound might wake Dr. Voylot next door. We did not dare have a light either. Voylot might see through the air vent. So as soon as we were safe, we blew out the candle. I had my gun ready. "Do not go to sleep," whispered Holmes. "You may lose your life if you do." How shall I ever forget that long wait? I could not hear a sound. We were in the dark. We heard the clock strike 12, then 1, then 2, then 3. Suddenly I saw a flash of light. It came through the air vent. Then all was quiet again. In a moment I heard another sound. It was a soft hiss. It sounded like steam coming out from a kettle. Holmes jumped up. He lit a match. He began to beat up the wall with his stick. "You see it, Watson?" he yelled. "You see it?" But I said nothing. At that moment, Holmes lit the match. I had heard a low whistle, but I could not see what Holmes was hitting. I lit a candle. Holmes' face was pale. I could see that he was afraid. I had no chance to ask what had happened. Soon the quiet of night was broken by a scream. It was the most terrible sound I had ever heard. It made my heart cold. These sated people heard the cry all the way down in the village. "What can it mean?" I asked. "It means that it is all over," Holmes said. "Bring your gun. We will go into Dr. Voylot's room." A strange sight met our eye. The lamp stood on the safe. The safe was open, and the chair next to the safe lay Dr. Voylot. The dog leash we had seen earlier was on his lap. His dead eyes looked up at the ceiling, and around his head there was a yellow band. It had brown spots on it. "The band," said Holmes. "The speckled band." The band began to move. It lifted its head. It was a snake. It was a swamp. It is a swamp adder, the most dangerous snake in India, said Holmes. "Let's put it back in its cage." Holmes picked up its dog leash. He looped it around the snake's head. He carried the snake to the safe and closed the door. This story is getting too long, so I will not say too much about how we broke the news to poor Helen Stoner, about how we took her to her aunt's house, or about how the police said that Dr. Voylot had died by accident. They said he had been playing with a dangerous pet. Holmes furthered me in on his side of the case. As soon as I saw that bear paw, I knew. He said it was there for some reason. It did not ring the bell, so it must have something to do with the air vent. When I remembered, Helen Stoner had said that Julia could smell cigar smoke. So the air vent must go into Dr. Voylot's room. Dr. Voylot had a cheetah and a baboon. Why not a snake too? I was doubly sure as soon as I saw the dish of mud. Voylot had trained the snake to crawl through the vent and down the rope. The snake would come back when he was heard. The clang that Helen heard, that was the safe door closing. I knew the doctor would try the snake trick again. This time Helen would be caught. So I waited. When I heard the snake hiss, I hit. "You drove the snake back into the other room," and said I. "Yes," said Holmes. "I hit the snake so hard it was good and mad. So it turned on its owner. In a way, I was the one who made Dr. Voylot die." Holmes sighed and picked up his pipe. "I cannot say that I am very sorry," he said. This book, Mysteries of Sherlock Holmes, have three stories. I would read it at once. The Red-Headed League. Sherlock Holmes, or 2. Sherlock Holmes still lives in our old room at 221B Baker Street. I called upon him there one day last fall. I found Holmes deep in talk. With him was a fat old man who had bright red hair. "Come in, Dr. Watson," Holmes cried. "Meet Mr. J.B. Wilson. Mr. Wilson, this is Dr. Watson. He works with me on many of my cases." The fat man got up and made me a little bow. Holmes sat back. He put his fingers together. He often does that when he's thinking. He smiled. "Watson, my dear man, I know you love strange stories as much as I do. Mr. Wilson here has just started telling his tale, and it's one of the strangest stories I have ever heard." Mr. Wilson looked proud. He pulled a piece of paper out of his coat pocket. "Look at this notice, Dr. Watson," he said. "You may read it for yourself." I took the paper from him. "To our red-haired man. There is a job open at the Red-Headed League. The pay is £4 a week. The work is not very hard. To get the job, you must have red hair. You must be a man over 21 years old. Come in person on Monday at 11 o'clock on 7 Fleet Street. Asked for Duncan Ross." "What can it mean?" I asked. Holmes gave a chuckle. "It is a little odd, isn't it? Do tell us more, Mr. Wilson. I owe a store at Coburg Square, said Wilson. It's a very smart place. Or late years, it has not done much more than give me a living. I used to have 2 helpers. Now I can pay only one. I can pay him only because he will work for half pay. I don't know what I would do without him. A good helper who works for half pay, said Homer. And what is the name of this nice young man? Vincent Sparding, replied Wilson. Oh, Vincent does have his problems. He is always down in the basement. He plays with all those cameras of his down there, via Flodanet. But on the whole, he is a very good worker. One day, about 8 weeks ago, Sparding came into my room. He had this paper in his hand. I tell you, Mr. Wilson, Sparding said, I wish I was red-headed men. There are another job open at the Red-Headed League. Now, I had never heard of the Red-Headed League. I don't get out so too much, but Sparding knew all about it. He told me that the league had been started by Ezekiel Hopkins. Hopkins was an American millionaire. He had bright red hair. All his life, people made fun of Hopkins because of his red hair. Then Hopkins came to London. In London, he got rich. So he left London, and he felt sorry for men with red hair. So when he died, Hopkins left his money to the red-headed man of London. Now, as you may have noticed, my hair is very red, so it was easy for Sparding to talk me into giving the job a try. What have you got to lose? He asked me. That was a Monday. It always slow day at the store, so we shut the shop. Sparding went with me to Fleet Street. I never saw such a sight. Fleet Street was packed with red-headed men. The street looked like a wagon full of oranges. I saw every shade of red you can think of. Orange red, brick red, Irish setter red. I was ready to give up and go home, but Sparding would not hear of it. I do not know how he did it, but he pushed and pulled. At last, he got me to the door. We joined to the line going up the steps. There was another line of men coming down. They were men who had been turned down. Our line kept moving. Soon we found ourselves in the room on the second floor. There was nothing on the room except 2 chairs and a table. Behind the table sat a small man. His hair was red as mine. This man looked over each new job hunter. He found some smart reasons to say no to each one, but my turn was different. The red-headed man took one look at me, then he got up and closed the door. He shook my hand. I'm Duncan Ross, he said. I was too afraid to say anything, so my helper spoke for me. This is J.B. Wilson, said Sparding. He's here about a job with the Red-Headed League, and he's just right for it. He's just right for it, cried Duncan Ross. I can't think I have ever seen such a fine head of hair. Ross stepped over to the open window. The job has been taken, he shouted. One by one, the men below all went away. Soon Mr. Duncan Ross and I were the only redheads in sight. Ross turned to me. How soon can you start your new job? I don't know, said I. You see, I have a smart store. Vincent Sparding broke in. Oh, don't worry about the store, Mr. Wilson, he said. I can take care of that for you. So I said I would work for Mr. Ross. I would come to Fleet Street every day between 10 and 2. My job were, you are not going to believe this. All I had to do was to copy the Encyclopedia Britannica. That's all. And for that, I would be paid £4 a week. I walked out of there feeling very pleased with myself, but not for long. Quite soon I began having second thoughts. This all had to be some kind of joke. I just couldn't believe that story about Ezekiel Hopkins. But as my helper had said, I had nothing to lose, so I showed up at Fleet Street the next day at 10. To my surprise, everything went just as Mr. Ross had said it would. I went to Fleet Street every day. I copied the encyclopedia. Every Saturday, Mr. Ross would come me in and pay me £4. Things went on this way for 8 weeks. I copied out all the facts about animals, about Albert, about Africa. I began to get tired of the A's. I hoped to finish soon and get on to the B's, when all at once the whole business came to an end. What, to the end? Said Sherlock Holmes. Yes, sir, said Watson. It happened only this morning. I went to work at 10 o'clock. When I got there, I found this card on the door. The Red-Headed League no longer exists. October 9th, 1890. Sherlock Holmes and I read this card. We looked at J.B. Wilson's face. The funny side of this story made us forget ourselves. We laughed until we roared. I can't see why that is funny, cried Mr. Wilson, his face turned as red as his hair. If you're going to make fun of me, I'll leave. No, don't go, said Holmes. I very much want to hear your story. I have a feeling it could be something very important. Why, of course it's important, said Mr. Wilson. I have lost £4 a week. Come, Mr. Wilson, said Holmes. You have lost nothing. You are £32 richer than you thought you would be. To say nothing of what you know about things starting with A. But I want to know what it was all about. Mr. Wilson said. That's why I came to you, Mr. Holmes. Can you find out for me? I will do my best, said Holmes. But first, a question. This Vincent Sparding, the harper of yours, what does he look like? Well, he's small, but very quick and strong, about 30 years old. He has a patch of very white skin on his face. Holmes sat up straight. He was very excited. That's enough, Mr. Wilson, he said. You may go home now. Today is Saturday. By Monday, I will have your answer. When Wilson had gone, Holmes turned to me. Well, Watson, he asked. I make nothing of it, I answered. It is very strange. What are you going to do? Go hear some music, replied Sir Holmes. There is a violin concert in St. James Hall this afternoon. Come along. We have time to make a stop on a way. We took the underground train to Aldersgate, a short walk, and we were in Coburg Square. One of the corner houses wore a sign that read J.B. Wilson. Holmes stopped in front of the house. He thumped on the sidewalk with his stick. He pounded in 2 or 3 more spots. Then he walked up and knocked at the door. Mr. Wilson's helper answered. He was bright, clean-looking young man. So sorry to bother you, said Holmes, but can you tell me how to get to the Strand? 3rd right, 4th left, the young man answered. He closed the door. That, said Holmes as we walked away, is the 4th smartest man in London. I have come across him before. Did you get a look at his knees?" "What about his knees?" I asked. "What do you know, Holmes? Why did you pound the sidewalk like that?" "My dear doctor," said Holmes, "this is no time to talk. This is the time to look. Let's see what lies behind the quiet block." He turned the corner. To my surprise, we found ourselves on the busy street. "Let's see," said Holmes. "There's a cigar store, and there's the city bank. And there is the restaurant. Yes." He turned to me. I want your help," he said. "Can you be ready at 10 tonight?" "Good. See you then. Oh, and Dr. Watson, do you have your gun? You have better bring it along." We waved his hand. Then he disappeared. I got back to Baker Street just before 10 o'clock. That evening, 2 horse-drawn cabs were waiting outside. Inside, I found 2 men with Holmes. We are all here now," Holmes said. You know Inspector Jones of Scotland Yard, do you, Watson? And this is Mr. Merriweather." Mr. Merriweather was long, thin, and sad-faced. He wore a very shiny top hat. He did not look at all happy. "This had better not be a wild goose chase," he said. "I'm missing my Saturday night card game." "First time in 20 years, Holmes laughed. "You'll play a more exciting game tonight," he said. "You, Mr. Merriweather, stands to win or lose £30,000. And you, Mr. Jones, you stand to get your man." "That's right," cried Inspector Jones. "John Clay, killer, robber. He is a young man, but he is at the top of the crime heap. Yes, he is quite a man, John Clay, the grandson of a duke. Went on the high-class schools. His head is as quick as his fingers. I've been on his trail for years. I've never even set eyes on him yet. I hope you will meet him tonight," said Holmes. "Let's go." 2 cabs were waiting outside. "You 2 men take the first cab. Dr. Wilson and I will follow in the second." Holmes did not say much during the long drive. We drove through the dark streets. Soon we got to the busy street near Mr. Wilson's house. Merriweather and Jones were there ahead of us. We followed Mr. Merriweather down a narrow alley. There was a side door there. At the end of the hall, there was a heavy gate. Merriweather opened that too. Then we went down some narrow stone stairs. There was another heavy gate at the bottom. Merriweather stopped to light a lamp. He opened the gate, and we passed into a large room. It was paired with boxes. Holmes held the lamp up to the roof. Filled with boxes. Holmes held the lamp up to the roof. "Look as if no one can get in from above," he said. "Or from below," added Merriweather. He tapped the floor with his cane. "Why, dear me, it sounds hollow," he cried. "Quite now," whispered Holmes. "Please sit down on one of these boxes. And do not try to get in the way. Your shouting has already put us in danger." Merriweather looked hurt, but he sat down. "We have at least an hour to wait," Holmes said. "They will do nothing until the red-haired friend is in bed. After that, they will not lose a minute. By now, Dr. Watson, I'm sure you know where we are." Holmes went on. "We are in the room under the city bank. Mr. Merriweather here is the head of the bank. I'll let him tell you why John Clay will sooner enter this basement. It is our French gold, the banker whispered. Over 30,000 pounds worth. He bit his nails and looked sad. We were afraid something like this would happen. Don't worry, said Holmes. It will all be over soon. And now we must cover the lamp. I'm afraid you'll have to wait in the dark. But first, let's get in place. These are very dangerous men. We'll have to be careful. I will hide behind this box. You men hide over here. Wait till I flash the light. Then close in on them. Watson, keep your gun ready. If they fire, shoot them down in their tracks. I bent down behind the wooden box. I kept my gun hand on top of the box. I was ready for anything. How long that wait seemed. Later I learned that we had waited only an hour and a quarter. But I felt like all night. I tried not to move. I was afraid to make a sound. I could hear the other men breathing. Suddenly my eyes caught a flash of light on the floor. The flash got larger. It became a yellow line. Then a hole opened. A hand came out of the hole. It was a thin white hand. The hand for the floor around the hole. Then everything went dark again. But not for long. There was a tearing sound. The hole in the floor got bigger. Over the edge peeped the face of a young man. There was a patch of bright white skin on his forehead. The young man pulled himself up into the room. A second later, he pulled the second young man up. The second man was also smart and thin. He had a pale face. His hair was bright red. At that second, Sherlock Holmes flashed a light. Great Scott, you're the first man. Jump, Archie. It's no use, John Clay, said Holmes. You have no chance at all. Inspector John had the handcuffs ready. Don't you touch me with your dirty hands, said John Clay. I have noble blood, you know. The cuffs closed around his wrists. You seen all now, Watson, said Holmes. It was early the next morning. We were back at Baker Street drinking tea. There were only one reason for the Red-Headed League. That was to get our old friend Mr. Wilson out of his store. You may think it was an odd way to do it, but I can hardly think of a better one. Of course, what gave them the idea was what Mr. Wilson's red hair. By chance, it happened to be the same color as Archie's hair, so Archie became Mr. Duncan Ross, I cried. Quite so, and John Clay became Vincent Sparding. Remember how he was always in the basement? He said it was for photography. But I knew better as soon as I saw his knees. They were dirty. It was proof that he had been digging. Then I tapped the sidewalk in front of the house. No, he wasn't digging out that way. So he must be digging towards the bank of the house. We walked around the block, and there I saw the city bank. Suddenly Holmes laughed. Do you know what a red herring is, Dr. Watson? It's a false clue that it meant to lead us away from the real clues. Or you've got a hand it to John Clay. He's not only smart, he's funny. Don't you get it? The Red-Headed League was just a red-headed herring all along. The Adventure of the Blue Carbuncle. It was the second morning after Christmas. I called on my friend Sherlock Holmes to give him a good wishes for the holiday. I found the great detective lying on the sofa. He was smoking his favorite pipe. Next to the sofa stood the chair. On the chair's back hung a black hat. The hat was dirty and torn. The magnificent sniffing glass lay on the scent of the chair. Holmes had been looking at the hat. "You know Peterson, the doorman?" asked Holmes. "Yes," said I. "He found this hat. He brought it here this morning, along with the food, fat goose. Right now the goose is cooking over Peterson's fire. The facts are these. It was 4 o'clock on Christmas morning. Peterson was walking home late. He had been at a little party. Peterson could see a man walking ahead of him in the gaslight. He was a tall man. He carried a white goose over his shoulder. The tall man got to the corner of the Gooch Street. Just then a gang of thugs came into the street. One of the thugs knocked off the man's hat. The tall man tried to fight back with his stick. Instead, he broke the window behind him. Peterson rushed up to help the tall stranger. But at the sound of the breaking glass, the man dropped the goose and ran. The gang of rogues ran away too, so Peterson was left with the goose and his hat, which surely he gave back to the owner, said I. My dear fellow, there lies the problem. True, we know the name of the owner. See, there's a small card that was tied to the left leg of the goose. The card says for Mrs. Henry Baker. Then here are the letters HB inside the hat. So we're pretty sure the tall man was Henry Baker. But there were thousands of people named Baker in London, and hundreds of them must be named Henry. Well, Peterson brought the hat to me. He kept the goose as long as he could, but today it was to be cooked or it would spoil. So Peterson took the goose home. He left the hat for me. At that moment, the door flew open. Peterson, the doorman, rushed into the room. His face was red. "The goose, Mr. Holmes! The goose, sir!" he gasped. "What about it?" asked Holmes. "See here, sir. See what my wife found inside." He held out his hand. There was shining blue stone. It was no bigger than a bean size, but it was so pure and bright that it twinkled like a star. Sherlock Holmes sat up with a whistle. "By Jove, Peterson," said he, "this is a treasure indeed. I suppose you know what you have there?" "Not a Countess of Morcar's blue carbuncle," I broke in. "The very same," Holmes replied. "I ought to know the stone's size and shape. Haven't I been reading about it in the Times every single day?" The Countess says she will give whoever finds it £1,000. If I remember rightly, I put in. The Countess lost the stone at the Hotel Cosmopolitan. "That's right," said Holmes. It was on December 22nd, just 5 days ago. The police have arrested a plumber named John Horner. I have the story here, I think. He found the page he was looking for. He read the news story out loud. Jewel robbery at Hotel Cosmopolitan. John Horner, a plumber, was arrested today. The police says he stole a jewel from the jewel case of the Countess of Morcar. The jewel is known as the blue carbuncle. Horner was arrested because of a story told by James Ryder. Ryder works for the hotel. Ryder said that he took Horner to the Countess of Morcar's room to fix a pipe. That was on the very day of the robbery. Ryder stayed in the room for a while, but he was called away. Horner was left in the room alone. When Ryder got back, Horner was nowhere around, but the dresser had been forced open. A jewel box was lying on the dressing table. The box was empty. The police say that Horner put up a fight when he was arrested. I didn't do it, Horner had cried, but Horner had once stood time for robbery, so the judge put him in jail while the court waited for proof. When Horner heard that he was not free, he fainted. Said Holmes. So much for what the police knew. He threw the paper to one side. Well, Watson, the question now is this. How did the stone get out of the box and into the bird? Here is the stone. The stone came from the goose. The goose came from Henry Baker. So now we must set ourselves to find Henry Baker. Give me a pencil, please. And that slip of paper Holmes wrote this note. Found at the corner of Gooch Street. A goose and a black felt hat. Mr. Henry Baker can have the same by coming to 221B Baker Street at 6:30 this evening. There, that's clear. Holmes handed the paper to the doorman. Here, Mr. Peterson, please see that this note is put in all the evening papers. The Globe, it's the Star, the Evening News, the Echo, and any other newspaper you can think of. Very worth, sir, said Peterson. And the stone? Ah, yes, I will keep the stone, thank you. And I say, Peterson, just buy a goose on the way back. You must have another bird to take the place of the one your family is now eating. After Peterson left, Holmes picked up the stone. He held it against the light. It's a bonny thing, he said. Just see how it glints and sparkles. Of course it makes crimes happen. Every good stone does. Do you think the man who Horner took the stone? I asked. I cannot tell, replied Holmes. What about Henry Baker? I went on. I think Henry Baker probably had nothing to do about it, Holmes said. But I shall find out for sure as soon as Henry Baker answers my ad. Until then, I can do anything. In that case, said I shall keep going on my rounds. I have sick people to visit. I'll come back tonight if I may. I'd like to see how this hour will end. I'll be glad to see you, said Holmes. Stay for dinner at 7. It was 6:30 before I found myself back in Baker Street. I got near the whole house. I saw a tall man waiting. The tall man and I entered together. Holmes rose from his seat. Mr. Henry Baker, I believe, he said. Please take the chair by the fire. You'll accord. Ah, Watson, you have just come at the right time. Is that your hat, Mr. Baker? Yes, sir. It is my hat. About the bird, Holmes went on. I'm sorry, but we had to eat it. To eat it? Mr. Baker half rose from his chair. He was very upset. Yes, the bird wouldn't have spoiled if we had not eaten it. Have we not eaten it? But there is another goose instead. It is about the same size as the others. Wanted to just observe. Of course, said Mr. Baker. Sherlock Holmes looked at me. I could tell Mr. Baker has passed the test. It was clear that he knew nothing about the jewel. There is your hat, then. And there is your bird, said Holmes. By the way, could you tell me more about where the other goose came from? I have never tasted a better goose. It came from the Alpha Inn, Baker replied. I go there almost every night. This year the owner started a goose club. My friends and I have started. I gave a few pennies each week. And at Christmas we get we each got a goose. The rest of the story you know. I thank you very much, Mr. Holmes, for all you have done. Mr. Baker bowed to us and went on his way. Holmes closed the door after him. So much for Henry Baker. Are you hungry, Watson? Not really, I answered. Then let's save dinner until later. We can follow up discreetly while it is still hot. It was a bitter cold night. We put on our overcoats and wrapped up our throats. Outside, the stairs were shining coldly in a cloudless sky. Our breaths looked like smoke. Our steps rang sharply on the pavement. 15 minutes later, we were at the Alpha Inn. Holmes asked for 2 glasses of beer. The owner brought them to us. Your beer should be wonderful if it is as good as your geese, said Holmes to the owner. My geese? Yes, I was talking just a while ago to Mr. Henry Baker. He was near Goose Club, I think. Ah, yes, I see. But you see, sir, they're not our geese. I got 2 dozen of them from a man named Breckenridge. He sells meat over at the convent garden. I thank you, said Holmes. Here's to your health, sir. Good night. We went out again into the frosty air. Now for Mr. Breckenridge, Holmes said as he buttoned his coat. We zigzagged through the back streets. Soon we were in the convent garden market. We saw the name Breckenridge on one of the largest stalls. The owner was a horsey-looking man. He had a sharp face. We had a small boy. Were just closing up. Good evening. It's a cold night, said Holmes. You're sort out of geese, I see. I can let you have 500 geese in the morning, the man replied. That won't do, said Holmes. I want the same kind of geese you sold to the Alpha Inn. They were fine birds. Where did you get them? To my surprise, the question made Breckenridge angry. Now then, mister, he said, where is all this about? I haven't heard anything else all day. Where did you get all the geese? Who did you sell the geese to? You'd think they were the only geese in the world. People are making such a fuss about them. Well, I have nothing to do with the others who have been asking, Holmes said. He sounded as if he did not care very much about it. You won't tell us, so we'll have to call it off the bet. You see, I've bet £5 those Alpha Inn geese were raised in the country. Then you will lose, said Breckenridge. Those geese were raised here in town. You'll never make me believe that. Will you bet then? Breckenridge asked. That would just be stealing your money, answered Holmes. But I'll take you on. Breckenridge laughed. He called a small boy to his side. Bring me the book, Spur, said he. Now then, Mr. Know-it-all, he went on. You see this little book? This is the list of folks from whom I buy. The numbers tell where to find them in the big book. See the page in the black ink? Those are my country goose raisers. See the list in red? Those are my town people. Now look at that third name. Just read it to me. Holmes read Mr. Oakshott, 117. Breckenridge wrote number 249. Right so. Now look up that number in the big book. Holmes turned the page. Here you are, Mrs. Oakshott. 117th Brixton Road. Eggs and birds. Now, said Breckenridge, what is the last thing it says there? December 22nd. 24 geese at 7.5 shillings, sold to the Alpha Inn at 12 shillings. Well, what do you say now? Breckenridge asked. Holmes turned red. He took a coin from his pocket. He threw it down on the table. He turned away with an air of disgust. We walked a little way down the street, when Holmes began laughing to himself. I saw a horse racing from in that man's pocket, he said. You can always use a bet with a man like that. It's the sure way to get at what you want. We are near to the end, Watson. Let's go home for dinner. We can visit Mrs. Oakshott tomorrow." Just then there were shouts behind us. We turned. There was trouble back in Mr. Breckenridge's store. Breckenridge was yelling at the little rat-faced man. "I've had enough of you and your geese," he shouted. "I wish you were all dead. Get away or I'll set the dog on you. Get out! Out!" "Ha! This may save us that visit to Mrs. Oakshott tomorrow," said Holmes. "Come, Watson, let's see who this fellow is." Holmes and I walked fast. Soon we were right behind the little man. Holmes touched the man's back. He jumped. His face turned away. "Who are you? What do you want?" he cried. "Excuse me," said Holmes, "but I couldn't help hearing your questions about the geese. I believe I can help you. Who are you, and how can I know anything? How can you know anything of this?" "My name is Sherlock Holmes. It's my business to know things. I know you're looking for a goose. The goose was grown by a Mrs. Oakshott. It's then sold to Breckenridge." He in turn sold the goose to the Alpha Inn. The owner of the Alpha Inn sold the goose to Mr. Henry Baker. "Oh, so you're just the person. You're just the person I need," the little man cried. "In that case, come over to my place," said Holmes. "It's better to be warm while we talk. Before we go, will you tell me your name?" The man looked to one side. "John Robinson," he said. No, the real name," Holmes said sweetly. Red spots came into the man's white face. "Well then," said he, "my real name is James Ryder." "That's right," said Holmes. "You work at the Hotel Cosmopolitan. Step into this cab, Mr. Ryder. I shall soon be able to tell you everything you want to know." The little man looked at Holmes. He was not sure if this was wonderful or terrible. At last he got in. Half an hour later, we were back in Baker Street. Not one word had been said during our drive. "Here we are," said Holmes cheerily. "That fire looks very nice. You look cold, Mr. Ryder. Please take that chair by the fire. I'll just put on my slippers now. You want to know what happened to your goose?" "Oh, yes, sir. It came here, and quite a goose it was, too. I don't wonder what you want to know about it. It laid an egg after it was dead. The brightest little blue egg that ever was seen. I have it here." Holmes opened his safe. He held up the blue carbuncle. It shone out like a star. Ryder stared. He did not move. "The game's up, Ryder," said Holmes quietly. At that, Ryder started to faint. "Help him to the chair, Watson," cried Holmes. "Give him a dash of brandy. There, he's starting to come to." The brandy brought some color back to the man's face. "I know almost everything," said Holmes. "Your plan was pretty low, wasn't it? You knew Horner had once served time in jail, so you knew the police would pick him up first. So what did you do? You made a small job in the Countess's room, then you sent Horner in to do it. When Horner was done, you took the jewel. Then you called the police, didn't you?" Ryder threw himself from the rope. "Don't turn me in," he begged. "I have never done wrong before." "Get back into your chair," said Holmes. "It's very well for you to be sorry now, but you thought nothing of sending Mr. Horner to prison." "I'll leave England, Mr. Holmes." "Humph, we won't talk about that," Holmes said. "But now, let's have it. How did the stone get into the goose? How did the goose get sold? Tell us the truth, man. It's your only hope." Ryder licked his lip. "I will tell you how it happened," said he. "The police arrested Horner, but I knew I must get the stone away at once. At any time the police might search me. There were no safe place in the hotel, so I made for my sister's place. She is married to a man named Oakshott. She raises geese for market. All the way to my sister's, I thought every man I met was a policeman. It was a cold night, but sweat was running down my face. My sister said I looked sick. I took my pipe and went out into the yard. I wondered what would be best to do. I made up my mind to go to Carbuncle. I knew a man there, named Maudsley. He went to the bed and has just served time. I knew Maudsley could help me start a drawer. But how could I be safe? The police might stop me at any moment. They would find a stone on me. I stood looking down at the goose. Then the idea came to me. My sisters had promised me to pick over geese for my Christmas present. I would have my goose now, and that's how I would carry the stone to Carbuncle. I caught one of the geese. It was a fine big white one with a bar on its tail. I took it to the back of the yard. I opened its beak. The bird put up a fight, but I got the stone into it. Just then the goose jumped from my arms. It ran back to the others, and I had to catch it again. I walked all the way to Carbuncle with the goose. My pa laughed until I choked at what I had done. Then we caught open the goose. My heart turned into water. There was no sign of the stone. I knew there had been some terrible mistake. I ran back to my sister. There was not a goose in sight. My sister had taken them all to the market. She had sold them to Breckenridge. "What's there another goose like the one I caught?" I asked her. "Oh, yes," she replied. "There were 2 geese in the bars on their tails. I never could tear them apart." "Well, you know the rest." Ryder suddenly began to cry. There was a long silence. It was broken only by the sound of Holmes' finger tapping. Then my friend got up. He threw open the door. "Get out," said he. "What's her? Oh, bless you. No more words. Get out." And no more words were needed. There was a crash on the stairs. Then a door banged. Then we heard footsteps running away. Holmes reached for his pipe. "I looked at it this way, Watson," he said. "The police do not pay me to do their work. The country countess will have her toy. The case agent Turner can go nowhere unless Ryder speaks against him. That man will not go wrong again. He is too afraid. Send him to jail now, and you'll make him a jailbird for life. Besides, it is the season to forget. Now I think it's time we looked into another bird. Let's hope our dinner won't start us on another wild goose chase." The end of Mysteries of Sherlock Holmes.